Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another Dokkan Battle animation analysis video. And boy, did I not think that we were going to be getting these animations now, basically. We are going to be taking a look at the part 2 LRs today. Of course, for this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Chala Head Chala LR. And then in the video that will drop later today, we're going to be taking a look at the Dragon Soul LR. So, I'm excited to say that for this video, we actually do have some comparisons to be made, not direct comparisons, as no one has made that video quite yet because these essays did just come out basically like last night at the time that you're watching this video probably, or for me, the same thing I guess, because I'm recording this technically in the morning of the next day. We actually can just take a look at the proper intro animations that these are based off of, because if you're unaware, these super attacks and the animations and whatnot are directly based off of both of the intros for these intros from Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Z Kai respectively. That's what all of the animations for the unit are based off of, and I think they may play it in game actually for a limited time. I remember seeing something about that, which is quite interesting, but I know in these particular videos with the actual super text, they don't have them in them, so we'll be doing that. I do want to apologize as well. This unfortunately is the only one that I could find of this. I don't know if this is like where they use that weird upscaling where it kind of makes some of the in-between frames a little bit blurry, but the Chala Head Chala opening has been changed multiple times throughout Dragon Ball Z's history, right? This section here with the two Saiyans walking forward, in the Android saga, it's a little bit different. In the different sagas, it changes to other things as well. Like, I just know that I believe it's Cell's hand, or maybe it's like supposed to be 17's hand or whatever. But obviously that like kind of forms because it's obviously an Android, right? And it replaces this because this is, you know, representing the Saiyan saga part. But I believe this is the first rendition of this, but this was the only one that I could find off of YouTube. So, I mean, at least that was the top search result. So we're just going to use this one. It'll work for the sake of the video. And let's go ahead and get into it. As per usual, I watch these through one time, and then we go ahead and hit them with the old analysis. I love this, by the way. The intro is pretty cool, if you ask me. There is a lot of things that I have to say about this one. By the way, I do want to, of course, always reiterate that I am by no means a professional when it comes to this type of thing. I just love taking a look at these essays because I think it's fun, and obviously looking at the assets all the time, I feel like I have a good understanding of what makes these animations good. So for this, we actually have a lot of interesting stuff here. We have obviously the intro animation, the 12 key, and the 18 key, but as well, we also have two different unit super attacks here. We have, first of all, the active skill, which I thought this is pretty cool that they made this the active skill. I quite like that because they definitely could have done some stinky grade ape transformation, and I definitely would have not liked that. However, I feel like they're shafting, I don't know, the grade ape as per usual. I always feel like the grade ape animations are not as good as they could be. Also, is that TUR World Tournament Piccolo that they did that with? Anyhow, as you can see, he has a unit super attack with Piccolo, which is pretty cool. I will say this section here, after right here, so good, like exactly like the anime. And I think this is also an AoE is what this implies too, so that's pretty cool to see. And then obviously we have a unit super attack with Goku. I believe it's with any of these characters, right? Goku, Yamcha, Tien, and Krillin. You will activate this 18 key version of this unit super attack. Look how HD Yamcha looked there, because obviously all of them are included there. So I think it's just one of those things that can be entered in. That section looks absolutely fantastic, by the way. Looks like it's taken right out of the anime. So let's go ahead and dissect this a little bit, shall we? A lot of people have been talking about these animations, and a lot of the opinions that I'm seeing on Twitter are very interesting because I feel like they don't align with my feelings on the animations a lot, which obviously is totally fine, right? Anybody can have their own opinions about it, but I feel like people are pretty unanimous on both of these, that they're kind of Like, especially for an anniversary unit, right? So let's go ahead and slow this down. We may have to bring it to 720p in a moment here. We will see after we actually have it. So first of all, this looks really cool, right? Obviously, this is the Z reflecting off of the 1-star Dragon Ball, which is, you know, like an emulation of this, not the Toei animation part, right? Of course, this classic section from Dragon Ball Z, right, from the anime where the Z reflects against the front of the Dragon Ball, right? And then obviously cuts to the Z logo here. I will say, I know that they probably couldn't just put the fat Z logo in the front there, but I gotta say, as much as I love this figure, it is so jarring having that go across the screen, cutting to this immediately. I would have much rather had them do some other transition, and to be fair, again, because there are so many different versions of this essay, right? Obviously, this is the one where Gohan is a kid, right? But you can still see a lot of these references, and don't worry, we'll talk about them in a minute. So I'm sure that there is also a version of this one where he is running forward, and maybe it does cut like that. But I don't know. I always say this. I feel like sometimes when it comes to Dokkan animations, they could forego the anime accuracy a little bit to kind of make it better rather than ad-libbing it. If it is just cut like this. Otherwise, if it's just cut like this because that's the way the Dokkan did it, though, then this explanation is unnecessary, and they could have just done a better transition. But you get my point. It's just a little bit jarring. Now, I will say, with this animation here, I really don't like the way that Gohan runs, and his head throughout the entire movement of this section makes me feel, I don't know, like kind of weird. It's just the way that his head like grows a little bit and bobs up and down as he's running. I don't know. It just looks very jarring to me. It doesn't look animated very well. It looks kind of uncanny because what it looks like to me is not a full animation of Gohan smiling and running. It looks like somebody took a cardboard cutout of Gohan's face and then taped it to Gohan, and then they had Gohan run forward with the cardboard cutout of his own face taped on his face as he's running forward. That's kind of what it makes me feel like when I see this animation. However, after this section, though, I quite like everything that we have on display. First of all, by the way, the ground moving is really great. I definitely like this perspective. We do have Gohan actually change expression here a little bit, which is nice. To ready up to jump, and I think the actual jump animation itself definitely looks pretty good. I do kind of wish they had a little bit of a better transition between the assets here, because you can tell this is a lot more of a low quality one. And then we go into this, which obviously, you know, this will get way bigger. I mean, we even transitioned to a more high quality one, going from here to here, right? And I just kind of wish there was a little bit of better transition. Obviously, the background tries to mask that a little bit, and I do like those speed lines. I just noticed, this is so weird, because obviously the characters come out from behind Gohan, right? It's so funny that Krillin literally just like, oh no, wait, who is this coming in first? It's Yamcha. Basically just like spawns in, essentially. It's pretty funny. I don't know, I will say, I'm sure that this is just taken right out of the anime, but it is weird, to me at least, that it is basically just a PNG of the character sliding across the screen. Like, I don't know what else they would have done, but I feel like I've seen them do flying, even when characters don't have auras, or it's not anything crazy. I feel like I've seen them do it better, excuse me. I do like Yamcha's hair and the Obi belt here, right? I think that definitely looks nice, right? Obviously, it's nice to always see a little bit of movement. Gohan has that too, even on his tail. I know it also doesn't help here that Yamcha also just looks like kind of static in his posing, right? He looks very stiff, I guess would be the best way to describe it, right? His proportions are also just a little bit weird, but I think that's probably, again, then taking from the actual anime. There also is, just with Gohan, right? I feel like there's a lot of pose changes that they could have done a little bit better on, in terms of the, like, changing of them. Like with this entire sequence here, right? After Yamcha appears on the screen, right? Where obviously Gohan is looking at Yamcha. They have just a quick bing, bang, bop, boot, right? For all these position changes. And I don't think this is necessarily too bad. but it gets a little bit egregious as we go on, I feel like. Once we get past this section, right, we get to here with Krillin, and obviously Gohan gets a little knocked away, right? That section I think is okay, where he actually does the flip, right? This could easily be edited into that, remember when Super was airing and Vegeta had that meme? Oops, I'm going forward, I'm sorry. When Vegeta had that meme where he was flying into space, right? I feel like that could easily be this Gohan here. But I think that this flip is okay, rather. But I feel like, you know, here to here, there could definitely be a little bit better of posing change. But when Krillin actually like hits him away, I feel like the initial hit isn't like an actual hit. I don't know. It just feels kind of weird the way that Gohan reacts to this. Again, I know that it's just because it's taken from the original animation. But Tien does fly by. He also feels really stiff. I think it also doesn't help with him. He doesn't have any hair or obi belt to be fluttering in the wind as he flies by, right? He literally is just a PNG in the sky. I do like that they have Gohan get back into position, though. However, that is... Oh, Gohan jump scare. That is one thing that I think I'm definitely not a fan of when it comes to animations like this, is that they transition from these lower quality assets, right, to then going immediately into this, right, which you can tell is definitely a lot higher quality of the pieces that are at play here. They could have just had it more high quality throughout, right? Because I know that they can, and I know that they have the budget for it, and I understand if it's farther away they want to do that, but Gohan was realistically not that far from the camera, if I'm being honest with you. So yeah, we have Gohan fly forward into the camera. Not sure why it's like this, by the way, where it looks like it's going to fade on Gohan's face, and then it lights up blue again before it actually, like, ends. Kind of weird. Alright, so we have Gohan running forward, which I definitely like this section. I think this little running sequence looks pretty good. Obviously, with the jump towards the Cybermen, this section is just kind of like okay, I guess. To be honest with you, I hate to say this because this may sound like a bit of a hot take, but after Gohan jumps like forward, you know, up towards the camera like this, right, which all of that looks good, when we get to here, this honestly feels like a free-to-play unit super attack or a LR super attack from like 4 years ago or something like that, maybe even earlier, because this is quite literally just a change of PNGs, right? Every single pose throughout this is Gohan literally just changing to another PNG, and there's not like any fluid movement in this whatsoever. And it's not even the type of thing where like they're jumping between the poses to try and emphasize how fast they're moving, right, in this battle. It is just kind of ugly, to be honest with you. It's literally just this rapid fire set of punches and kicks, but not rapid enough to justify them doing it that way, right? And then when Gohan actually runs into the enemy, this is just like the actual jump in the setup for it, right, is fine, where Gohan actually comes down and you can see there's a bit of like he's getting ready. It's interesting too because they don't actually show him jump, right? They cut to him just flying forward after he was squatting down. That way they can cut corners a little bit and they don't have to animate the actual jump. But this doesn't feel like it has any impact to me, right? It's literally just this little makeshift explosion effect and the enemy flies away, right? Definitely to me does not feel like it has a lot of impact. Then we, of course, go to the swords section. Hydrated Hydrate, by the way. I will say it was a little bit jarring seeing this because obviously we do have a unit that's kind of based on the scene already with the World Tournament Gohan. However, this is definitely some different assets because the face is definitely different from that actual super attack. So we have Gohan with the sword, which looks pretty cool. I do like the little swing that they do on that. Gohan jumping up towards the sky looks pretty good. I feel like this is a lot better of a use of these like far away assets because this actually feels like it fits, right? They also do a lot of cuts where I feel like they're cutting out like they don't have to animate it because they're cutting it out, right? They don't actually show you, right, Gohan jumping up, because they literally go from him holding the sword to him then soaring through the air. And then they also jump cut past that to him already readying it, right? It's kind of a shame because I would have loved to see a lot more fluid animation on this where, you know, he properly jumps up and then brings the sword down to swing it rather than just, you know, cutting in between these shots like this. But nonetheless, obviously Gohan flies down, which is just a static PNG as he comes down. You hate to see it, especially in modern day animations. And then we have Gohan fling down, which actually, wow, I am very unimpressed by this section. At least I think the back of his hair moves a little bit because you can see kind of fluttering there. But they literally just turn this PNG. They don't have any other movement on this guy as far as I can see. Maybe a little bit of tail movement. It's hard to tell. His hair definitely does change a little bit though. But yeah, literally no movement on this at all until I do like the swing. I think that they always do a good job with the effects. I don't know what it is with Dokkan, but for some reason they like sometimes fumble on the characters depending on the animation, and then but with the effects for the characters they're always popping off. I don't know what they are doing at the Akatsuki studio. It's always interesting though. But I like that little glint of light on the sword before we have Gohan actually bring it down, right? You can see that his arms actually do move. And this cut is okay, right? This shot of Gohan is super sick, may I add. This shot right here, right, where he actually brings the sword down, right, and they transition from this to this, right, they cut pretty far, right, and he's at a different angle compared to where you were initially looking at him before. I just kind of don't like when they do this. It's always just a little bit jarring to me in the animation, because I know for, you know, some people they probably just won't notice it, right? It's something that may go, you know, unnoticed by most because they're not obviously trying to take a look at these in detail. But I know for me, this type of stuff always bothers me because I feel like there should just be a more fluid transition, and especially for a anniversary LR, nonetheless, especially for a carnival LR. This guy's animations are kind of reminding me a lot of the quality of the Hachiak movie LR. Not Hachiak himself, but the Z Fighters, right? Everything except for the active skill is kind of what I'm feeling like is on the same level of quality. With these Carnival LRs, I feel like it has only been disappointment after disappointment, to be honest with you. Really the only one that I feel like I can confidently say had some good animations in him, besides one of the worst animations that we've ever seen, which was the active skill, that being the Tech Super Saiyan Goku. His animations for the most part were pretty good, but I feel like these carnival units are always lacking, which is just kind of a shame, honestly. It feels like an excuse for them to put a higher price tag on a unit that's, you know, lacking a lot in the animation department for the most part. Anyhow, we do have the swing of the sword, which I do quite like this sequence. I think that looks really nice. You know, I always love it when they do effects like this to represent the sword cutting through. And then, of course, the Cyberman falls to the ground. And this is where I have a problem, too. Look at how jarring this transition is to this. Where are we with the frame here? Hold on. There. This to this. You're telling me they couldn't animate more in between that? Like, guys, come on. This almost looks like a little bit of a different style, right? Obviously, it's consistently the Z style throughout, but we have these thicker dark lines there, right? Gohan's pupils are a lot more filled in, right? And then we have the more squared off shape to the eyes. And then we immediately transition back to the smaller pupils with the rounded off eyes and the thinner black lines, right? I do like him putting the sword back in the scabbard. I think that that effect is really good with him obviously leaning up. And I love this little bit of animation that they have here where they kind of double up on having the sword here where it gives it that effect like it's moving so fast. So you're seeing an after image. That is very cool. We do have the animation finish off by Gohan standing up again. I feel like this is another part where I really would have liked to see them actually animate more him properly standing rather than just going from one pose to another. And weirdly enough, I feel like it's also back to the line work of before, right? Where it went from like this quote-unquote art style to this one to then changing to this one again. I don't know, just very weird, inconsistent, I feel like, for sure. Alright, the smoke cloud in the back looks good too, by the way. Definitely always like to mention that. Okay, so we have the 18 key super now with Gohan getting chased down by Nappa. I think this section looks pretty good for sure. Definitely like this. I kind of wish that this was a little bit more thought through, because this kind of doesn't make sense that Gohan's running forward like this, and then you still have him running forward when he immediately switches positions to go attack Nappa, and you still have the ground moving forward, and he moves like that. That literally does not make any sense at all. That literally is like a YouTube poop thing. Where they have like a character just fly off into space basically with like obviously no, you know, like no thought put into it for the gravity being realistic, because of course it's for a gag, right? That's kind of what it feels like here, right? They take Gohan and he just goes whoop, you know, right towards Nappa. It's just so weirdly executed, if I'm being honest with you. This whole section right there, right? The way that he moves up, I don't know. Maybe if he like skidded against the ground or something like that, that would feel like it would be a little bit more natural. And I will say, this angle to this angle doesn't really feel the same to me. I guess it is for the most part the same, but you're just kind of twisted at a different camera angle, obviously. But I still feel like there's a little bit of different like position with the feet and the hands there that obviously they don't have them change, because you know it's implied that he just changed it in that little cut there. But we have Gohan fly towards the enemy, which this section looks very nice. I love the way that Gohan himself is actually animated here. That definitely looks pretty good. Very nice close up there. And then we have him collide with the enemy. And again, unfortunately for this little section here, it is virtually the same thing as before, where we have these small little sprites that are basically just PNGs changing, right? You have that one there. You have a couple of different ones in here, right? And then once he kicks up, right, it just basically changes to that one until it changes to the one where he is now falling down towards the earth. Yeah, like this whole essay, maybe except for that beginning portion where Gohan's running forward, really almost feels like a free-to-play unit to me. Like, these animations feel like some of the animations that we've seen for free-to-play are. Like, genuinely, the Bobbity and Majin Vegeta LR that we just took a look at, maybe except for the part with Pui, right? I would say that those animations outclass at least what we've taken a look at so far, right? By a long shot. Which is just so unfortunate to see, because obviously this is a summonable unit. Alright, so we have Gohan jump up and then fall down towards the ground. I do like this section. And I will say, even though this has that little bit of a ghosting effect, right? I think it works well for here, because it feels like he's moving a little bit in like slow motion, right? And is supposed to be climactic. And it's a nice bit of rotoscoping overall, besides obviously the fading sections, right? I do quite like the rotoscoping that's at play here, because it kind of makes it feel like a 3D model that's falling towards the ground in slow motion with the way that they fade it, right? I think that that's really well done, honestly. That section is fantastic. We fade to white and go into the character. I do want to see, by the way, is that section supposed to be when Gohan is falling into... No, I guess I'm thinking of the part in Dragon Soul. I was going to say, when he, like, yeah, I guess that's in Dragon Soul. When he jumps off of the Capsule Corp ship, and then he, you know, jumps into Goku's arms. Oh, no, here it is. I knew it was in this section. Yeah, so that section of the animation there is actually directly, excuse me, referencing this little scene right here, where we have Gohan literally fall towards the earth. And I think that is a really cool reference there. Obviously, with these animations, they can't completely take it from the intro because, of course, you know, it wouldn't really make sense for some of these because obviously they have to be like attacks, right? But obviously making little references to it like this is definitely pretty cool, if I do say so myself. I do definitely like this. And yeah, you can... kind of interestingly enough, doesn't look like they actually... Oh, no, they do the ghosting. Okay, good. Yeah, so that is quite literally a direct reference to the original in that regard. Definitely nice to see. Yeah, okay, cool. I was thinking that I remember that from Chala Hechala, so I'm glad that my memory served me well there. Okay, so then we have this section where Gohan stances up and is ready to attack. We do have a very nice animation actually on this section. I was very impressed when I saw this whole just entire section executed, right? From Gohan lifting up his hands, right? This whole thing is super fluid. This right here, this entire section is exactly what I expect of the entire animation. If they could have it be like this for the whole thing, it would be cooking. Because this section looks great. I remember when I saw this when I was watching this earlier, right? When they first dropped them on Twitter. This looks great, right? From him actually bringing his hands up to charging the Makanko Sapo. Or the Makanko Sapo. Sorry, the Masenko rather. Got superhero on the mind as always. Obviously the lighting is really good. Of course, the light sort of reflecting off of him looks really good. And then him actually winding up, I really like the way that they animated that. Looks very good. And this transition to the anime speed lines I think is really good too, where they have him bring his arms forward and that transitions him into the anime-esque effect. And of course this right here also looks really nice. A little bit of an epilepsy warning on that, to be honest. But I really like this, right? Obviously, Gohan brings his arms forward, and then we have the black background take hold with the colors splashing everywhere. And then, of course, this very nice version of Gohan here that is basically just, you know, mimicking the colors that is coming out of his hands with the ki. Very cool. I definitely like that a lot. And then we just kind of have the ki blast fly forward and hit the enemy, which the explosion definitely looks very Dragon Ball-esque of this era. So that is pretty cool. Alright, so we do have now of course, the active skill before we get into the unit super attacks, of course, as well. Hydrator, baby. So this section right here is actually pretty cool because, of course, we have the moon in the sky, and then we have Gohan turn into a great ape, which... Not only that, but this entire sequence where he's jumping around looks really good, right? I think that this is animated very well. The only thing that I think is kind of unfortunate about it is that this section is so nice looking. And then when Gohan actually finally does the attack, right? This part looks really good, right? Where he's standing on the cliff. I really like how this is animated. The mouth beam is just kind of okay with it charging up in his mouth, right? It is basically just a pink circle that is growing. This section looks pretty good, though. I like the lighting here. But once we get here, I feel like it's kind of lackluster. It is literally just like straight line, fly into enemy, right? And this section here, I need to watch it. We're going to watch it in Chala Hechala in a second. But I feel like with him just looking on, they should have animated him more rather than him just literally standing there for this section. They could have had him still jumping around or something like that, right? I think it doesn't help that he looks super stiff and his tail also doesn't move there. Let's see. So that section is here, right? So the thing of that is that he doesn't actually do an attack here. That's why that section is so janky, right? Because this section where Gohan's jumping around, right? This makes sense, right? And obviously that is literally how it is in the animation in Dokkan that we just saw a minute ago, right? With the section right here, right? Obviously this is ripped directly from the opening, which is cool. But I think that's why the Ki Blast section looks a little bit weird, because as far as I'm aware, this is a Dokkan original thing. So they could have easily had him moving around because they didn't have to directly reference anything with this. I don't know. I feel like for some reason, whenever I watch a Grade A super attack, they always get shafted in some regard. I don't know why that's the case, but I feel like that's what always happens. Alright, so we have the smoke explode from the top, and then of course we have our first unit super attack here, which is the one with Piccolo. Now, we're not going to go over this beginning section too heavily because obviously, you know, we've seen it before. However, this is where we get our first change. Once Gohan goes to jump, this makes a lot more sense. And I feel like this is probably what they were thinking more about when they were making these animations. I have a feeling that they had in mind the unit super attacks more because, to be fair, when it comes to these units, they tend to focus on what is the unit's biggest animation rather than their more quote-unquote basic animations. And it's kind of funny that that's the way that they do it because a lot of the time those animations you only end up seeing once or a couple of times. I mean, unit super attacks are a lot easier to get or more frequent to get than active skills. But still, it's kind of funny because obviously, like, you know, when it comes to normal supers, that's probably what you're going to be seeing the most. So it's funny that they spend less effort on that, typically with most units, right? Alright, so we have Gohan jump up into the sky, which I actually really like that, right? And I like this section, the way that it's executed looks good. Gohan also has a nice little bit of minimal movement as he's actually getting up into the air. That seems a lot more sensical to me than Gohan, like, sliding backwards when the ground is moving forwards type of thing. So we do have the card art, which I really, really like, by the way. Definitely very, very cool. We have Gohan ready up for the Masenko again, which this whole section is literally just the same thing as we saw before, right? However, once the attack actually hits the enemy, we do have Piccolo float down, which this is pretty cool. I will say, I almost feel like Piccolo looks like he's like a completely different art style than Gohan here. Maybe it's just because of the way that he's shaded, but I feel like this asset of Gohan looks like it's a lot lower quality than the Piccolo asset in my opinion. I don't know, I definitely think it has something to do with the shading, but it's still a little bit jarring having these two specific PNGs next to each other. I do kind of wish Gohan also had a little bit more of like a fluid change on the expression. Oh my gosh. We got to talk about Piccolo. We got to talk about this man because holy cow, all of the pose changes throughout this entire thing are just so not great. This entire sequence right here, basically up until the part with the white light, just in my opinion is not good at all, right? Like, this is the first part that I think this actually gets good in terms of Piccolo's section of this. So the introduction is fine. You can see that there is ghosting already, right, with the cape. They didn't bother to animate it properly, and they just decided, I'm going ghost, and did a lot of this ghosting effect, which, again, this particular thing here, I believe, is just something original to this, as far as I can recall, and obviously scrubbing through this, there isn't anything where, you know, Piccolo comes to save Gohan like that in these animations, so that is definitely something that they could have put a little bit more effort into. And not to mention, when Piccolo actually leans down here, something is really weird with his shoulder pad. Like, you can see he kind of grows a little bit in this particular frame. Kind of strange, if you ask me, but I feel like as he moves down, right, you can also see a little bit of, I swear I saw a little bit of ghosting effect on that as he moved down, but I still feel like it just looks a little bit awkward, right, as he's beginning to squat down. Like, this isn't really how you get into this position. At least that's kind of the way I feel, right? I feel like his movement also feels a little bit janky here. It's almost a little bit more obvious that it's just a bunch of different pieces being moved around rather than like one fluid animation to me. And then we have him get into this stance before they immediately cut to this. And I will say this section is just very strange to me because they have Gohan's like soulless expression for this section rather, basically just stare at Piccolo, and they literally just tilt his head a little bit on the body to readjust for where he is. I've seemed to recall this Piccolo being from another card art or something, but I think that's just because it's referencing something related to what this scene is taking this reference for Piccolo. Because this particular like expression for Piccolo looks kind of familiar. But anyway, we have him fly forward, which I feel like at least for this, the ghosting effect makes a little bit more sense because it's like, oh, he's moving fast. But at least with here, they animate the cape properly, right? They obviously have like actual animation on the cape fluttering in the wind. So I don't understand why they couldn't do that earlier when they did the ghosting effect. It just doesn't really make sense to me. This section of Piccolo also feels a little bit stiff, right? Maybe it's just the angle that he's coming on. Maybe it's just the fact that his legs don't move. Obviously, his cape does indeed move a little bit. But this particular part where he elbows Nappa, right? I feel like does not have a lot of impact. This is the same thing as the attack that we saw from Gohan like father, like son, I suppose. But obviously, when Nappa gets elbowed here, it just doesn't feel like it has a lot of impact to me. And this punch is so strange. So, first of all, the wind-up itself just doesn't really look that great to me. And then once he finally is ready to punch, they just go crazy on the ghosting effect and change it into this, which of course, you know, Piccolo basically punching forward and then hitting Nappa away, which this section afterward is fine. But here is where we really pop off. So of course, we start with the lighting effect, right? With the light coming there. And Piccolo's eyes do change with ghosting, but I feel like it kind of works better for this section. And then of course, you can see the blinding white light there. That then engulfs Piccolo, and obviously the enemy flies away, which I will say it kind of doesn't make sense, because isn't this scene supposed to be when the attack is flying towards Piccolo and not him throwing the enemy away, if I remember? Because what this is kind of implying is that Piccolo like punched them away, right? Where are we here? He punched them away, right? And then it cuts to his face and he's almost using like Jiren's like be gone with his eyes technique. And then the enemy flies away. I don't know. He's just kind of an interesting sequence of events. But this definitely looks good. Obviously, this particular section, where are we here, is referencing the scene, funny enough, right after Gohan's. Basically, directly, right, where his eyes grow bigger. And then, of course, we have the white light there engulfing Piccolo. Definitely very, very cool, right? Definitely love those little references that they threw in there. And then, obviously, we have the enemies fly away. And I think that the smoke effect looks good, too. Definitely no complaints from me on that one. Okay, so now we have the final unit super attack with all of the Z fighters here. First of all, I love this establishing shot. I'm really hoping that, the white is there. I really wish that there was a way to get rid of that, because that would be so nice to be able to just have this shot of all of them standing there. That would be so cool, dude. Unfortunate that the white is there, because obviously it's still there when he's changing positions, right? But nonetheless, this still looks good. I definitely like this a lot. It's nice that they're all kind of looking up at the same thing too. Gohan running here looks fine. Interestingly enough, you know what I just noticed is this sequence of Gohan running here and jumping up. Hold on. Where was that? Was that in the very beginning of this animation? Yeah. That's just from the 12 key. Interesting. With him running forward and then jumping up. Yeah, that is literally the same thing. Does he? I don't think he rocks back and forth as much, though, in this animation. I think he's a little bit more stable. Oh, no, he does rock back and forth. Yeah, no, that's literally the same thing from the 12 key. Okay. So, I don't know, man. Like, I understand why they did that, but as far as I'm aware, this is the 18 key unit super attack, I believe. Yeah. You have to have the 18 key to activate this, because I remember seeing that in the translations of the unit. So it's kind of weird that they would reuse something from the 12 key. I mean, I guess I get it. If you're going to do this angle, then why not reuse? But At the same time, I kind of feel like maybe they did this on purpose because then they could just reuse the animation they already had. I don't know. Just sort of strange to me, to be honest with you. But we do have Gohan jump up towards the sky where he goes up to meet Vegeta here. I definitely like that bit of animation. Very, very fluid for sure. Obviously, the card art popping up on the screen for the final time, and we have this Masenko sequence here. However, it is not done with just Gohan this time. You can see a very clean transition, by the way. I love this, the way that the camera pans to Krillin, right? That is so much nicer. You can even see that they kind of have that little cut there of the, let's go back to that, of the blue, right, appearing on the screen with the scene from before sort of being pushed away. That is how you do a transition. That is so much better than a jump cut. Because I feel like lesser essays would have jump cut. Even a lot of the earlier stuff in this essay was jump cutting. That's what I'm talking about. They know how to do transitions. And all the time they do these jump cuts that make the animations feel less fluid and make them feel a lot more choppy. And I know they have the capacity to make cool transitions like this, but they don't utilize it. It is so frustrating. Anyway, this particular section looks good. Obviously, Krillin looks fantastic here. We then cut to see this cut makes sense, right? Obviously, that transition is so nice, but cutting between the characters here, because this is showing them all launching their attacks off right at the same time, these cuts make sense thematically, right? We have Tien, who also looks great. I love the shading on his back as well, from obviously the light being on the way it reflects off him. Most HD Yamcha I've ever seen in my life. Maybe even more HD than his actual unit, which is kind of crazy. Very, very cool looking. I love the way that that looks. I love the way that it's drawn too. Woo! That shot is gas! Holy cow. This also kind of reminds me of like the Budokai style for some reason. Like the Budokai aesthetic or art style, I guess you would say. But yeah, definitely very cool with Yamcha actually launching it off. That looks very nice too. You can see that they actually bothered animating his hand, even moving it around a little bit at the end, even though it does look a little weird with that last little section there, but it's on screen for so long, it's not that big of a deal. Or not that long, rather. And then obviously all of their attacks clash at the end. And before we actually get to Goku's section here, let's of course just take a look, because obviously that little end bit here, is it this particular? No, maybe it's in the beginning of this. Obviously, since it's not side by side, I have to scroll through and find it, but I know for a fact that it is. I wish they would have done something with the Dragon Balls falling, by the way, this little section right here. I kind of wish they would have done something a little bit more with that. Anyway, obviously we have Krillin launching off his attack here, which again, this entire section right here is literally just what exactly we saw in the animations. I will say, definitely Yamcha's art style, if we go back to that particular shot, it's interesting because it is definitely not as close to the original's art style. I like the style that's present here, right? I definitely don't dislike it. I mean, like I said, I think it looks like the Budokai style, and I really like the Budokai style, so at least I'm pretty sure that's the game that I'm thinking of. If I'm getting that wrong, I think some of you in the comments will know what I'm talking about. Kind of looks like the models from that game, but almost like 2D. It's just interesting to me that they didn't try to mimic the anime style as much, seemingly, with this animation. Because usually they're on point with the anime sort of like art style from that particular era, right? And I don't necessarily think that this makes these animations less good. It sounds like a way too simplistic way to put it, but I guess that's a way that you could put it, right? I just think it makes it a little bit more interesting that they would decide to, for some units, try and be as anime accurate as possible and try and get it down to a T. Whereas for other animations, they decide to go this route and kind of do their own thing a little bit. It almost makes me wonder if it's like two different teams that they have for the super attacks, right? If they have like the A team and the B team, and the two different teams kind of work on the different kinds of units. I don't know. Just kind of makes me think that it's a little interesting, honestly. But either way, though, obviously with both of them launching their attacks, we then have Goku raise his arm up to the sky, which this whole section here is literally like unmatched. So good, dude. The entire section of this animation is so nice to look at. From Goku himself to the actual effects, it's kind of funny that they basically just have the attack be like the enemy just gets enveloped in generic blue energy. I guess it's supposed to be like the energy that's shooting out of Goku. Where are we here? Like right here, right? This like blue line. But it's kind of funny that obviously, you know, because an enemy doesn't really get hit with this, you know, that's what they ended up going with. But this entire sequence looks fantastic. Goku himself looks perfect, right? His actual movement too is so nice. The transition between the different style and quality of assets is perfect. Obviously the little electricity looks so good, which was something I was really hoping that they were going to nail, because obviously like the electricity building around Goku and then having this like shoot up to the sky, right, is a super iconic shot from this animation. So it is definitely nice to see that they didn't fumble that. And it's kind of interesting because Yamcha's attack basically just cuts right into Goku, which kind of makes sense why Yamcha actually launching his attack, which is right here, right? Looks a little bit weird because obviously, you know, it's not based off of the anime. But yeah, they nailed this, I feel like, right? This is obviously the original animation. Oh, it does have a little bit of that ugly smearing from upscaling this into 60 FPS, so I apologize about that because that's a little yucky. But again, this was just the best that I could find. It works for the sake of the reference. But yeah, that whole section there, right? It's kind of interesting that they basically made that into an attack. Because obviously, right, by no means is that an attack. It's also interesting, too, they add that little, like this little thing at the end here. Which I feel like I've seen that in a version of Chala Head Chala before. Maybe I'm just misremembering that. But regardless, if it is a Dokkan original, that also looks really, really good, too. Okay, that is gonna do it for this video. Overall thoughts on this one. I gotta be honest, I'm not really a fan of these animations. Also, I'm apologizing for yawning, by the way. It's 1:33 in the morning when I'm recording this video, and I'm very tired. But I just feel like these animations could have been better. I like the concept a lot, because obviously it's really cool to have animations based off of the intros. And nonetheless, obviously, I mean, most of, if not all of their Dragon Ball Z specifically, right? And I guess Kai, because of the other unit, intros are super iconic. So it's nice to see those animations get some love, because obviously that's just another way that they can, A, make another Goku or Gohan of the same unit, but also B, obviously it's just some more unique animations for us to join. But I feel like even in the animations that have the best stuff in them, there's still some things in the animation that I'm definitely not a fan of, and I feel like look pretty janky, right? And sometimes out of place. And that's the thing, right? I feel like when it comes to Dokkan animations, a lot of the time I find myself being a lot more, you know, impressed and enjoyed by the animations that are almost like directly ripped from the anime, whereas like the quote-unquote Dokkan original animations for some of this stuff I almost tend to like end up thinking are worse. But see, I don't think that that's necessarily like, I don't think the problem is that they don't have anime material to go off of, because clearly they know how to make good animations, right? I mean, if they're taking it right from the anime, surely these boys should be studying that and going, oh, hey, here's what we can do to make our own, right? And have it look like the anime and have it look good, right? At least just look fluid, right? Like, that's the minimum that I ask. So, I don't know. This LR, for me, literally feels like a free-to-play unit, right? Like, obviously, it has way too many super attacks to be a free-to-play LR, but with a lot of the animation in here, it's like there's some really good diamonds in the rough. But with most of this, it honestly feels like a free-to-play LR from a couple of years ago. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. I will definitely be very curious to hear your thoughts. I am going to go check out the Kai one now. I am very interested to see how that is going to go. But let me know if you are going to be summoning for this unit in the comment section below. I do hope that they do more Dokkan original stuff because I think it's interesting and I like taking a look at it, and it's also obviously nice to see because then we get some unique stuff that's not just something that's taken from the anime. And I do hope that they continue to do this concept of doing units based off of the intros, because I think that would be really, really cool. And they could definitely do some super unique stuff with that, right? Whether that be from Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Super or even Dragon Ball GT. Could you imagine a Dandan Kuruto one? Oh, that'd go crazy. Anyway, I will catch you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.